Hi, I'm Lou Green. Welcome to America's Crossroads. Hi, welcome to America's Crossroads. I'm Lou Green. Tonight we have a very special show. We're going to Winter Haven, Florida to meet Dr. Deane Briggs and his stamp collection. What's unique about that? Well, it's early Florida history through the post office and stamps. This should be very interesting. Then on Tampa Bay, Mark Calvert gives us the story and the tale of two parks in Tampa. And then we're going to visit with the Cornet Conspiracy, and this is a group from all over the United States that are involved in Civil War, band instruments, and that era of restoration and music. So first, let's go to Winter Haven and meet Dr. Deane Briggs. Hi, I'm Lou Green. Welcome to America's Crossroads. And today the Crossroads kind of intervene in Winter Haven, Florida. I'm with Dr. Deane Briggs, who is a philatelist.
Well, Lou, I've been collecting stamps for 50-some years, but about 25 or 30 years ago, got interested in Florida postal history and actually established in 1992 the Florida Postal History Society, and we published a wonderful book on Florida stampless postal history with examples dating back to the very earliest letters from Florida. And we publish a wonderful journal, and our journals cover all sorts of topics. This one's on Marjorie Keenan Rawlins. We did Florida alligators, Spanish-American War, which had a big presence in Tampa, and Fort Jefferson, of course, down in the Keys. Lou, what I'd like to do is basically talk a little bit about the different periods in Florida's history. You know, it started in 1513 when Ponce de Leon came here in search of, quote, gold. It was a misnomer. It was originally thought that Appalachia meant gold, but it actually meant this area of Florida. And of course, Apalachicola is named after Appalachia, and on early maps it's all called Appalachia.
Yeah. Well, I ask you, if stamps could talk, and envelopes like this could talk, you've got a real interesting living history of Florida, because there's no other state in the country that has any story like this.
Well, the oldest continuously populated city is St. Augustine, and this is actually the earliest letter from Florida that was carried on a ship to Charleston and postmarked in 1767, the earliest postmarked letter from Florida.
When did it arrive?
It actually arrived in Philadelphia, and from there went to Norfolk, Virginia. It required 6 shillings, because at that time we were still in the British period. Now, if you remember, the Spanish were the first to settle in Florida, and mainly settled in Pensacola as a penal colony for their Mexican felons. And really there was nothing in the way of postal history during that first Spanish period. But that ended in 1763 when the British took over Florida from the Treaty of Paris. And they ruled for about 11 years in Florida and really established post offices and postal routes. They started to develop roads, a road connecting between St. Augustine and across the plantations of northern Florida was called the King's Highway, and it still exists today. Other letters that we have is the earliest letter, or second earliest letter from Pensacola, and this one is from 1768. It was carried on a ship from Pensacola. Only 5 ships a year carried the mail from Pensacola back to England, so that you had to wait quite a while to send your letters and to receive letters. So this was the earliest one, and it actually mentions the postmaster in the letter. Another interesting letter, this one is exciting. This is from 1771, also from Pensacola, sent to Mobile, and it's requesting cattle fit for slaughter because the Indians are going to have a powwow, and the merchant needs to have cattle to feed the Indians. The Spanish reclaimed Florida in 1784 and didn't, again, do much to rule Florida. They didn't have a lot of governmental services. They had a mediocre post office. Most of the post offices had to go into the United States offices in Georgia or in Mississippi territory to enter the mail. They couldn't even leave. This is examples of letters from Pinckneyville and Fort Adams in the Mississippi territory in 1807, where letters written from West Florida had to be carried by a way carrier who received 1 penny to carry the letters to the nearest post office to enter the mail.
So the way carrier was on horseback.
On horseback. Oh,
yeah.
They didn't have roads.
Of course. Yeah.
1807. Interestingly, Florida on the eastern coast had a lot of Georgian settlers starting to move into Florida about this time. And so in the early 1800s, there were plantations set up, and they had pirates that would come in and raid them, and there was no police, no force to protect them. So a clandestine group of Georgians talked President Madison and Secretary of State Monroe to allow them to invade, sort of like the Bay of Pigs, 1812. And it's called the Patriots' Rebellion. And actually in 1813, they declared themselves a territory and elected a pseudo-governor. So they had actually a flag, and it's one of the 7 times in Florida that we've been ruled by another flag. We're Spanish, the British, and now the Patriots from Georgia. In 1819, Spain finally decided it was time to give up on Florida. They weren't able to police it very well. The Americans were basically far outnumbering all the Spanish that were here. And so in 1819, they signed a treaty to transfer all of Florida to the United States. Typically, again, it took 3 years for the Senate to ratify that treaty. But at any rate, in July 10th, 1821, Florida became a military government. And Andrew Jackson, who had been the officer in charge of the early First Seminole War, actually was elected the governor of Florida. So Andrew Jackson, later president, was our first governor. Jacksonville's named after him. This is the earliest letter written after the United States received Florida, and it's written by the postmaster pro tem in Pensacola, and he says, "This letter is being sent on the first ship to leave since we transferred title to Florida. And I don't know what I will do, whether I will be in my current status, which is postmaster, or become a merchant." But it's a fabulous early letter from Florida. This is an interesting early letter. This one is from 1828. It's from Wanton's post office. Wanton was the furthest south that any little settlement in Florida at that time was, and it's actually now where Micanopy is. So you can imagine nothing south of Micanopy existed in 1828. This was a trading post.
Where is Micanopy?
Micanopy is now just south of Gainesville. Oh. And this letter is written by General Brooke, for which Fort Brooke in Tampa was later named. This is a Seminole Agency, Seminole Wharf fort and a post office, and it is very interesting. I have a couple of later letters. These are from Tampa. These are with the very first United States stamp, and these are quite rare. There are only about 2 of these known. This is one with the stamp number 1 on it. And it talks, actually, it's written from Fort Meade, which was, again, a military fort, and it mentions Billy Bowlegs and the Seminole Indians. And this is an example of one of the number 2 stamps from Tampa also. The Civil War came on, and Tampa was involved, it was sort of a trading post, but it was blockaded very quickly by the United States Navy. So very little letters were sent from Tampa. There's only 3 letters or 4 letters known from Tampa during the Civil War. This is one of them, and it's from 1862, I believe. And interestingly, it was postmarked with this exact postmarking device. Tampa, Florida. This is what they used to postmark the letters. But the thing broke in 1863 in May. This was written in April. This is in May. The inside part, the metal die broke, and they couldn't use it anymore. After the Civil War, Tampa was next most famous for a period of the yellow fever epidemic in 1888. And Tampa had, the person living in Tampa had gone to Jacksonville, carried the yellow fever to Jacksonville, and they started fumigating the mail. So they would stamp, put them in railroad cars and stamp nails through all the letters and then fumigate them with sulfur, so that this letter is one of those fumigated letters. You can actually see on the back all the little holes that went through into the envelope inside.
Now, is most of this material covered in the book?
This book only goes to 1861, the beginning of the Civil War. I'm currently working on a Civil War book, which is going to go into press. In fact, I'm exhibiting a Civil War collection at an international exhibit in London next year, celebrating the last year of the war. The British actually were very supportive of the Americans.
So the people who are interested in this material can go to a
Here's
website.
my website right here, and this is what I would like people to do. It's a free website, www.fphsonline.com. That's Florida Postal History Society Online, just the initials, FPHS.
That'll scroll along. We'll have that on the screen.
You'll have that on the screen.
Yeah.
But I'd love to have people look at that. They can subscribe to our journals. $15 a year. You can become a member. We publish 3 of these beautiful journals each year, and you can actually archive. We have archives for the last 20 years of these journals, which are free on the website. So go on the website, look at it. We have stories. In fact, the entire book that I showed you is also digitally downloaded for free on the website. So you can read all the articles of the original Patriots Rebellion, the Spanish West Florida, the East Florida, the Territory, and all that is all on the website, and including the Seminole Wars and all the forts.
Great. Thank you, Deane. And what I'm thinking is that these books ought to be widely distributed for all of the students in Florida to study Florida history.
They can do it on the website.
Right there. And, make this part of the standard curriculum. So in the meantime, thanks for coming on America's Crossroads, Deane. Very interesting story.
Thank you.
And we hope that the viewers out there go to the website and suck all this stuff up. This is Florida. Come on. This is hometown stuff.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Deane.
Bye.
Hello, this is Mark Calvert with Eye on Tampa Bay, and this is A Tale of Two Parks. Let's start by taking a look at Eulalie, a new restaurant from the Columbia Restaurant Group, opened August 26th at the old Tampa Waterworks building at the north end of the Waterworks Park. It is named for the Eulalie Spring, which again bubbles water that flows into the nearby Hillsborough River. The Columbia Group spent $5 million renovating the building and the surrounding patio, installed a new kitchen, brewery, and beer garden. The menu features a variety of oysters and locally themed seafood, beef, and sides, and freshly brewed beers. Well, it's not exactly Rick's on the River, but it's not unreasonable prices for the atmosphere, food, and wines. Eulalie adds some new local flair to the Tampa waterfront. Waterworks Park at Doyle Carlton Drive and West Henderson Avenue is the third riverfront park in the city's urban heart, and it opened on August 16th this year. The city of Tampa spent more than $6 million to refurbish the largely unused Waterworks Park into a riverfront playground that will act as a magnet for nearby Eulalie patrons. The park offers some nice views of the Hillsborough River with boaters, paddlers, and kayakers active, and it connects to the northern $4 million leg of the Tampa River Walk for those out for a walk or a bike ride. In keeping with the Waterworks theme, the park also has a splash and water park for the kids to play in. The southern end of the park features a memorial for 2 Tampa Medal of Honor recipients. However, there's still work to be done in the area. Just 1 block east is another park, and it'll look like a gathering spot for the homeless. Just about a mile away on the other side of the river is Julian Lane Park, just on the north side of University of Tampa and Tampa Prep. Named for a former mayor of Tampa who served from 1959 to 63, it opened in 1977. Time and neglect has taken a toll on the park as it gets little use beyond some ball fields on the north side, a rowing center on the south side, and some tennis courts, despite some nice views and open areas. Local activists are involved in the planning process, which is now underway. They would like a pool, but the city is not building a pool as part of the plans. But local residents remain concerned that the process of rebuilding the park is yet another step in gentrification of the area, as other projects such as Envision Tampa involve demolishing nearby public housing and developing mixed-use retail and residential neighborhoods. The park features a couple of mounds that open into small amphitheaters. You can get a nice view of the river from the top of one of them. The new plans are expected to bulldoze the mounds, which provide some separation and interesting viewpoints that are rather unique in the area. Tampa has budgeted more than $9 million to renovate the park over the next 2 years. However, we'll have to keep an eye on it because in the past year or so, the city of Tampa has had a budget shortfall as high as $15 million. Recently, they've been able to narrow that down to about $6.3 to $8 million, but due to some better performance in the budget, we'll have to see if they're still able to keep up the funding of these parks.
Hi, welcome to America's Crossroads. I'm Lou Green, and today we're going to take a little trip back in time to the Civil War era in the United States. Not the fighting and all that kind of stuff, but we're going to talk about the bands, the music, and the instruments they played, mainly focusing on the instruments. Here's a cornet. This was made around 1878, so this is post-Civil War, so they used a lot of the same technology, but here is a Civil War, this is a Civil War era sax horn. This was made by Hall and Quimby in Boston about 1862 to 1865. They were right there when the Civil War was being done, and this was the kind of instrument that they played. But you'll see the Cornet Conspiracy and all the fellows who collect this stuff, play this stuff, and bring it back to life. So let's go and visit the Cornet Conspiracy in Richmond, Virginia. I caught up with Nick DeCarlis at the Cornet Conspiracy meeting in Richmond, and Nick can tell us the story about how did the Cornet Conspiracy ever get started.
Well, in the late 1890s, a lot of us actually were bidding against each other on eBay for the same cornets. And in those days, you could actually figure out who the other person was who had just beat you out for the cornet that you had to have.
The person you wanted to kill.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But as we got to know each other through phone conversations and emails, we actually found out that we had so much in common that we had to get together and meet each other, and some of us did. Well, in 2001, I did a concert in Gainesville, Florida, a tribute to Bobby Hackett. And 1, 2, 3, 4 people said, we're going to come down to Gainesville and hear your concert. Well, I tried to tell them I'm not really that good of a player and they were going to be coming a long way for nothing, but they insisted on coming. Before I knew it, we had 15, 16 people coming to Gainesville for this concert, and I started to get nervous. So I said, well, why don't you bring your old cornets with you, and we'll have a luncheon, and we'll set up our collections, and we'll talk about our old horns. We did that, and before I knew it, we had over 400 cornets in one room for a luncheon. And we started hanging out, having dinner together, having beers together. And after about 3 days, somebody said, well, where are we going to do this next year? And we all looked at each other, what do you mean next year? And that's when it was born. Somebody said, well, we'll do it in Atlanta next year. And Niles Eldridge said, hey, we're going to call it the Cornet Conspiracy. The name stuck. And with only a couple of exceptions, we've done it every year since 2001.
Hey, baby. Hi, we're at the Museum of the Confederacy in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm with two of the great horn players that you've never heard of, Dutch Eihoven and Rob Stewart. Please tell me what you're playing here, guys.
This is a circa 1855 4-valve E-flat contrabass tuba by Graves and Company, Boston. Graves was one of the leading American brass instrument makers of the early years.
I have no idea.
And this is a B-flat baritone horn made by Fisk, I believe in the Massachusetts area?
Yeah, Worcester, Mass.
Worcester, Massachusetts. 3 rotary valves made out of German silver, and it plays pretty well even for an old instrument.
Now speak out that way because your adoring fans are dying to know about this stuff.
It's like an awkward and difficult instrument to play. It's because it is. And this instrument came into vogue about 1810 and had died out by about 1860. Although there were still some holdouts who played key bugle right up into 2014, like us. And the instrument was superseded by the valved cornet. What we have here are E-flat cornets with rotary valves. One has a bell front. This one has an over-the-shoulder bell, which threw the sound back towards the soldiers who were marching behind the band. Very practical invention, but that died out in about 1875. Next we have B-flat cornets, and we have a number of those dating from the 1860s through almost 1900. Side action rotary cornets, we have piston valve cornets, we have piston action rotary valve cornets, and we have 1, 2, 3 extremely rare Boston Musical Instrument Boston Musical Instrument Manufactory SCOC patent cornets. That's 4 of the, how many known in the world? 4 out of the 7 known in the world. Right in front of you here. After the B-flat cornets, we have the E-flat alto horns. And we've got a couple of different kinds of alto horns. They came in bell front, bell up, bell back, rotary valve, piston valve, depending on the time period. What we have here is a Boston, presenting each writer of Boston, a Boston Musical Instrument Company upright rotary alto. Then we have a Connet DuPont, very early CG Con. And those of you who played musical instruments may have played con instruments in high school, junior high school. This was among the first instruments made by Con in the late 1870s. And this instrument is okay. This is a solo alto made by the Boston Musical Instrument Manufactory. Also, it's a pocket model. You had to have a big pocket to put that in, but it's much more compact than most of them. Then, in the far corner, we have the tenor and baritone horns. We have an upright by, is it E.G. Wright? No, this is Boston. Oh, Boston Musical Instrument Manufactory, very popular during its day. And the over-the-shoulder instrument is by one of the great makers of New England, Isaac Fisk. And is played by one of the great players of New Orleans.
Well, that's it, folks. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope to see you again next week on America's Crossroads. In the meantime, I'm going to hit the road one more time. Bye-bye.